What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and today we are looking ahead to KSW 86, which goes down on September the 16th, 2023, over in Poland, and the bantamweight title is atop the card. But I'll tell you one thing, it's a very good card. I was just looking at the betting odds. Maybe I'll read out a few of them as I go through the card here, but the biggest betting favourite on this card is plus 210. There's nobody else over plus 200. That tells you how close this card is. So many good fights, such good matchmaking, and some very, very, very close fights, as those betting odds would suggest here. And I think, look, I spoke about it the last time. I think I did a KSW preview, or maybe one of the other European show previews. I just think it's a massive time for European MMA in general. There's so many opportunities out there. There's so much stuff happening. You know, there's even an Octagon card as well this weekend. We had a Cage Warriors card last weekend. I know that was over in the States, but still it's a European promotion. They have the Irish card coming up and plenty more. We have Bellator obviously coming to Dublin with their big Irish card. We have PFL Europe coming up. Is that next week or the week after? It's coming up very quickly anyway, and then they'll have the final in Dublin as well. Plus, look at the UFC. Look how many Irish people they're signing. They're signing a lot of European names. Look like they're going to be coming back to Ireland and other parts of Europe next year even more. They were just in Paris and all that. So I tell you what, like, MMA in Europe at one time, it felt very like we're kind of, you know, a little bit maybe the noisy neighbour type of thing. You know, we do well. There's always a good fighter coming out of the odd country, but it felt a little bit like we were second-class citizens, maybe a little bit. And I feel like it's not necessarily that has changed or anything. I think European MMA has kind of caught up, and there's a lot of European MMA worth watching. There's a lot of quality coming from European MMA, and look, we've had a few champions now, obviously, as well, with Connor and Bisping and a few more, and Jan Blachowicz and Joanny and Jacek and many more coming out of Europe. And I think people are kind of realising this is somewhere to pay attention to. But also, I think some of the promotions do such good work that it's almost hard to ignore them, really. If you're in Europe, obviously we're going to be paying attention, but even outside of Europe, sometimes it's hard to ignore them, you know, because KSW especially, you know, you would have to put them down as number one in terms of the show they put on. It's absolutely mesmeric. Like, the stars that they create in their area and all, that's absolutely unbelievable. Like, look what Cage Warriors do. The stars they are creating, the quality of fighter they're creating. And okay, people are recently like, oh, well, you know, some of the people are losing, going, yeah, but, you know, things happen like that as well. People lose and people will go on. Like, it happened. Look at Soldic going over to one championship. It happens. You lose a couple of fights. Like, it can absolutely happen. But I just think it's massive that the fighters are getting these opportunities, and they're, for the most part, absolutely taking them, whether it's in the short term or the longer term. And I think it's not just the opportunity to go to the UFC or go to Bellator or whatever. Like, we've talked about it many times now, but the way KSW have created their own market, it seems like Octagon are doing a similar thing, although there's a few fighters going from there to the UFC. But, like, to be able to put on, like we have here, a quadrilogy, let's say, I know this is the third one in KSW, but you get what I mean, for that quality and level of fighters to be able to have both of those fighters stay in an organisation and fight there multiple times, it says a lot. It really does say a lot about the organisation, and I think I think that's really relevant to what we like what we think about KSW, right? It is very different from some of the other organisations. Like, your favourite fighter might be in, whether it's Octagon or Brave or Cage Warriors, whatever it might be, and, you know, they might be in the UFC the next time you hear about them. Whereas in KSW, they usually stay in KSW because KSW pay well, and they have created that place where you can be a lifer in KSW. And do you know what? That's important. Because we don't have really many places like that. Like, Bellator was kind of that place, right? Like, say someone like Chandler and Alvarez did end up leaving, but they could have stayed and they could still be there, you know what I mean? Say someone like James Gallagher's been there a long time. There's MVP has been there a long time. You know, everyone kind of, sometimes, you know, they leave and they go. But they didn't have to. None of those people I mentioned would ever have to go. They can spend their whole fighting career in one organisation. Now, we'll see what's happening with Bellator, where it goes, but if you think about it, where else has that ever been possible? Like, PFL is rather new, and hopefully that is the case. And maybe you could say the same for one championship, although that's maybe another good example. But like, there's really nowhere else, is there? But KSW has been that for a good long while now, and it's absolutely great to have it. You know, it's absolutely fantastic to have it. So, if you like fighter welfare, and if you are on the side of the fighters, I'll tell you what, there's worse places you could be looking at than KSW. Even on this card, we'll talk about Henry Fadipe in a second, but to have an Irish fighter in an organisation like this, you know, I'll throw my bias in, it's really good. Because sometimes you interview an Irish fighter and geez, he's a nice guy, and like, well, if he loses one more fight, he could be fighting for freaking 500 quid again, type of thing, you know? And I think that about all fighters, to be honest, but like, it's if you think that way, right, and you absolutely should think that way, KSW is the place for you, because they have fighters long term. You have a loss, they don't mind, they'll bring you back. If you make yourself into a draw, they will make you a draw. But like, even as well, they push them really hard. Like the last time Henry Fadipe fought, they did what was the name of the show? Baywatch. They did like a Baywatch ad, and he was in it. It was hilarious. It was brilliant. Like, and it kind of went viral. That's the sort of stuff. People saw him in that. They'll know him the next time he fights, and it'll be, you know, pushed again. So I must say, I must hand it to KSW. They're a very good organisation, an important organisation, and one with a very good card coming up this weekend. So let's get straight into it there after like 7 minutes of not getting straight into it. But do you know what? I feel like these shows, look, sometimes we can get in, we can do a preview of the card, and I will absolutely do that. And I love doing the previews of the cards. But like, sometimes we need to sit back and almost, you know, think about where everything's going and think about why they're going in this direction and things. And I think, you know, if we give 5-10 minutes doing that once a month, I don't think there's any problem with that, and I haven't heard anyone complaining yet. But let's get into the card and let's talk about it as well. The main event, Jakub Wiklacz against Sebastian Przybysz. They have fought, as I said, 3 times before. Here's the betting line for you: -150 for Wiklacz, +120 for Przybysz. Again, shout out to my guy Sean in before I start every time. He's absolutely great, helping with the pronunciations, helping with everything. He's an absolute great man for all of the Polish MMA, Eastern European MMA, at Dinny Rants on Twitter. Follow him. He's the best. I really, really appreciate the help he gives me with these previews. I literally couldn't do it without him. But if you're not following him, do follow him. But so the fourth fight between these, 2-1 to Wiklacz in the series. As I mentioned earlier, one of the fights happened outside of KSW and ACB, I believe, and they are 1-1 in KSW. So, you know, it's the KSW trilogy for this one. And let's say Przybysz wins this one, we could have the 5th one, winning our 2-2 for the belt again. But we'll see about that. We'll see how it goes first, I suppose, with this one. It's a very interesting fight, right? Because I did a preview for their last fight, and I went back and watched the fight before that, and obviously watched this one as well. And you know what? I've been thinking a lot about trilogies lately. And, you know, trilogies always seem to take a similar sort of pathway, maybe, right? Unless they're trilogies that happen, you know, say like, and maybe they fought 4 times, but maybe it's a bad example. But like, let's say, you know, Frankie Edgar beat Japan, right? So they fought a couple of times when, you know, BJ was maybe reaching the end, but relatively close to his prime, and Frankie was kind of a young, very good up and comer. And then the last one took place when BJ was, you know, kind of completely finished. And there's sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes trilogies are not, you know, they fight when they're 27, they fight again when they're 27, and then they fight when they're 29 type of thing, you know? That to me is like, you know, a real trilogy where you can actually analyze all 3 fights in the same vein, right? So this would be a good example of this. They haven't fought that far apart. Let me, just for the sake of argument, I'll tell you exactly when they fought their fight. So 2022 was the last one. 2020 was the one before that, and in 2017. So look, I suppose there is 5-6 years in between them. But 30 years of age is Przybysz, and Wiklacz is 27 years of age. So he was 22. Maybe the first one can be written off a little bit, but that was 4. So we'll take the trilogy, right? So the point I'm trying to make here, right, is you look at a fight, right, where it's fight number 1 of the trilogy, right? And let's say it's a striking match, and they strike and fighter A wins, right? And maybe he wins 3-2, and then they have the second fight, and it's 5 rounds of striking, and fighter B wins just barely, and then they have the third one, and maybe someone gets a knockout or something like that, right? So 3 fights that kind of went a similar way. Or maybe you could have one guy got wrestled in one fight, the next fight he kind of was able to stop the wrestling, he won it on the feet, and in the third fight he got wrestled again and lost, something like that. So they go a very similar route to victory for the fighters. This one is not like that at all. This one is completely the opposite of that. This is a fight where the 3 fights so far have been very, very different. And the way they have been different is how I suppose how they have been won. So just to quickly maybe recap, I think there was a lot of mistakes in the first fight that saw Wiklacz getting the win back in 2017. I think the wrestling in the most recent one was the biggest issue, and in the middle one was kind of a bit of both, a bit of madness. So there was one fight where it was like, a lot of mistakes. There was one fight where there was like a bit of wrestling, maybe he shouldn't have wrestled there. Then he went out and he started striking and won the striking. And in the third one, there was a lot of wrestling again. But I think this one more like directed wrestling. So 3 very different fights, right? And we were coming into this one. It's like, how is it going to look? Who's going to win this one? So I think 2 big things here, right? So for Wiklacz, his last fight was in 2022 against Przybysz, and he hasn't fought since then. So it's not that far away. What is it, 10 months or something like that? Przybysz has fought twice since then. He fought in May and he fought in July. Both of them went into the third round, so it wasn't like he got 2 easy finishes or anything like that. So I think that might make a bit of a difference. Now, who will make a difference too? I'm not too sure, but you look at it from Przybysz's point of view, and I think after he lost to Wiklacz, he had a lot of holes, I suppose, to cover up. Like the wrestling was a big issue in that one, and he will need, I think, to keep it on the feet to win it here. Having gone back and watched him aside from that, it's kind of obvious to see what way they both wanted to go. Wiklacz is the better grappler, as he showed in that fight. Won it because of that. He has very good sweeps, very good on top, very good trips, very good top control. And the one big issue in the middle fight for Sebastian, and even in the last fight as well, I think Wiklacz forced him to wrestle more and forced the wrestling more, should I say. But Sebastian too willing to grapple. And I think he was too willing to grapple because, as I mentioned in the past fights, he had a bit of success with the grappling, right? And I think the adjustments that Wiklacz made, like, this is a very complicated fight. I'll be honest, this is a very, very complicated fight. There's adjustments on adjustments happening here when you get to a 4th fight. But the adjustments that Wiklacz made his wrestling a lot more dominant than it had been in the past. So if you think about it, right, you're Przybysz, you go in there, having lost to him once, with obviously wrestling being an issue, and then you go in and beat him, and you knock him out with punches to the body in the 3rd round, and you go, well, that's kind of sorted now. But then they fight again, and he wrestles you again and beats you that way. Well, now what are the adjustments going to be? Maybe we'll talk about that in a second, but Sebastian, the way he fights is actually kind of, I think it's conducive to beating a wrestler, because he is constantly kind of moving, He's a southpaw, but he moves in and out, looks to attack, but then looks to counter-attack. And I think that's exactly what you need against a wrestler, if I'm being honest. Like, if you're allowing them to come in without any threat of a shot, it's an issue. But he doesn't. He has the threat of a shot. And if you can't attack them and push them back, it's also an issue. But he can. Wiklacz in on the feet. He has a good jab. But his confidence really isn't in his striking. You know, and do you know what? It's a big issue in MMA, right? It's where you have a confidence in an area, but it only lasts so long. And I think that is Jakub's biggest issue. He has confidence in his striking, but only up to a certain point. And then he's going for grappling, even if he's winning the striking. But then if the grappling doesn't work for him, I'm not necessarily saying there's a panic there, but there isn't the level of confidence he had at the start of the fight. So, it's very hard for him to win a fight, let's say striking over 5 rounds, but it's also very hard to outstrike him over 5 rounds because he will grapple you. You know, Wiklacz, he's training out of Red Dragon alongside the likes of Gamrot and Michalski, so you know the training partners are really good. He, you know, when he gets the fight to the ground as well, he has a lot of submissions. He has 12 wins. He's 4 by submission and 5 by knockout as well. So, you know, 9 of the 12 have been inside, and that's for Przybysz. In fact, for Wiklacz was the one I meant. Sorry, he's 9 submissions out of 14. And you know, that's an awful lot. You know, as I said with Przybysz there, he's no mug on the ground either. You know, he can defend himself, but when you have that many submissions, it means a lot. You know, and then the other side of it then, as I mentioned with Wiklacz, he's never knocked anyone out. So he is, as I said, that confidence in the striking just doesn't seem to be there for him. And, you know, he was the guy as well who had he had a Coliseum fight, but it fell out on the day of the weigh-in. So that was a big opportunity. And coming back here, obviously, to fight Przybysz. And for Przybysz, I suppose he's 30 years of age now. I think he'd been training, I was talking to Sean about, he was training over in Kilcliff. And I think before the last one, he was training over there as well. And, you know, as someone who's like a very good striker, that will only be helped by going out there. The thing, I think, look, the last point I'll make about this on the reliance of grappling for Przybysz, not the reliance on grappling, but the want to grapple, it's because he's very good at it. The problem is you're fighting Wiklacz, who's definitely better than you at it. And sometimes fighters struggle to maybe acknowledge that and kind of realize I have to fight a different way against this guy. I can fight that way against every other guy, but maybe not against this guy. So I think if Przybysz does that, he has a great chance of winning. And if he doesn't, I think he will almost certainly lose. But to maybe give my pick for the fight, again, looking at the betting, Wiklacz minus 150 plus 120 for Przybysz, and I think that's just about right. I think the grappling will be the winner of this fight again, and I think we won't be having the fifth fight because I think Wiklacz will take him down. I would like to see an extra bit of striking out of Wiklacz, just because I think it'll set up those takedowns a little bit easier. Now, as I said, he was able to get to the takedown a lot better in the last fight, and you know, maybe we could go through it in a fine-tooth comb and say how he did, but he did it anyway. It doesn't matter, it happened, and if he can do that again, he will almost certainly win this fight. Right, let's talk about the next fight. A very, very interesting middleweight fight between Michal, Michalski and Dominik Humburger. This is a fight you look at, and there's a guy who's 10-5 against a guy who's 7-0. You're kind of thinking, okay, the guy who's 7-0 is on his way up. Maybe he will be the guy now. But I'm not necessarily too sure. What this is here is like your quick twitch athlete who hits really hard against the the guy who is and I would describe him, and I think this is fair, and maybe if he heard me saying it he might think it's too fair, but I think I would describe him as a cardio athlete. And I'm talking about Humburger there. He's a guy who just goes and goes and goes, and like it's not necessarily that he goes at the hardest pace, but he goes at a pace, and that same pace for the whole fight. Like, it's very rare you actually see that in fighters. Like, most fighters set out their stall and then, okay, I'm gonna gradually kind of dip off, and so is my opponent, and I'll be fine. But he doesn't. He fights at that same pace all the time, and he's a big, long, muscular guy as well. He's 3 inches of height in his opponent, and he hasn't maybe fought he hasn't fought the top guys. He fought Boris Barkowski, who's a good fighter, and a few more as well. But like, Michal has been in there with Adrian Bartakinski and a few more. Some, David Zavada, David Galan, even, who's a very good fighter outside of it. And he fought Daniel Skibinski actually in his pro debut, who's fought on every one around. He actually has a win as well over Nasruddin Imavov, who's in the UFC at the moment. So like, he has fought to that level that Humburger just doesn't have yet on his ledger. But that doesn't mean he can't get there. Michal, he reminds me a little bit of Michel Materla. Lovely kicks, lovely leg kicks. He kind of throws that stretch uppercut, which could be an issue if the fight goes a little bit longer. And he does get caught with it as well. Dominik does. He's a kind of very straight up controlled striker. He's a soldier, and they love making a big thing out of him being a soldier as well. And I just think, if there are improvements, let me just see when his last fight was. It was only in June, his last fight, and I don't think I could find that fight. It was a couple of fights before that I was watching. He is a powerful guy. There's no doubt about it. Like, he's 7 wins, 6 knockouts, right? Only 1 decision. But I wonder if his power can actually go up a level, if we put it that way. Now, Michal has been knocked out 3 times and he's 5 losses, and maybe he can get to him there, but I think I'd be a little bit surprised. Let's check the betting odds for this one. -225 for Humburger, Mishlak +175. Honest, I think that'll be in my bets of the week, if I'm being honest. I just think Michalak, his pace will be a little bit too much. I think his power early will be a little bit too much, and Humburger's slower pace will help him long term, but short term, I think it might be an issue. So I'm going for the underdog on that one. So yeah, let's look at a couple of more of the matchups here. I'm very interested actually in the featherweight bout between Lom-Ali, Eskiev, and Daniel Shokovsky. Lom-Ali's 31 years old, training out of that UFD gym in Dusseldorf, which we all know the likes of Antun Rakic and Roberto Soldic there and all. He's a good wrestler, but he's like your old school wrestler who's fallen in love with boxing type of thing. He's a pressure fighter with his hands down. And he's become a very good kickboxer, with knees and elbows and the whole lot. Spins a lot as well. He has power. He's tough. He's durable. And he can keep going. He has good cardio. Do you know who he reminds me of a little bit, right? He reminds me a little bit of Artem Lobov. Good power, kind of hands down, maybe not the biggest guy in the world. And if he lands on you, he's very, very dangerous. He's kind of an awkward style, a lot of experience and stuff as well. Coming in against, Dawid, who is a little bit less experienced, with only 10 fights into his career, although he is a very, very good fighter as well. And we'll see how that works out for him. On the other side of it, Shokovsky is 27 years of age, training out of Ankos MMA. Very good kickboxer, loves to hit to the body, loves to throw his high kicks. He's a switch stance fighter. And do you know what, as well, watching him, I compared the other lad to Artem. It's very hard to find anyone to compare him to. He's a switch stance fighter, right? But it's like he fights like a karateka on the outside and a Muay Thai fighter on the inside. He does like that front leg stomp to come in, but when he's on the outside, he throws like the kind of the open stance back leg high kick and things. It's very odd, very interesting guy. And go and watch even in this fight or watch him in previous fights. He's the underdog, +125, -162 for Lom-Ali, and I think they have her right there. I think, look, if the wrestling works, if he does wrestle, I think he will be able to get the win. But, you know, as I was saying, and I was talking to Sean about it as well, he doesn't like to use the wrestling. You know, he's kind of fallen in love with the striking. And if he strikes too much, Smielowski can absolutely win this fight, but I'm looking forward to that one. Right, let's talk about the Henry Fadipe fight. He's fighting Artur Szczepaniak, whose name I pronounce perfectly, like all of these names. We'll go with Artur. He's 26 years old, Polish, trains out of Gink in Belgium. All action fighter, very well rounded. Do you know the one thing I noticed about him going back? Very good athlete, moves smartly, picks his shots very well. People probably know Brian High, who's fought in many different organizations. He actually knocked him out with a head kick. And I think this is a very interesting matchup. Like Henry Fadipe, he's a Nigerian born. He's fighting out of Team Phantom in Dublin City Centre, and he's been around for a long, long time. You know, Henry has fought some really, really good guys on the Irish scene and beyond as well. Like, even if you look at his early days, you know, he fought the likes of John Redmond, John Michael Shield, who I was talking to a few people recently about John Michael Shield, and they were saying this guy is probably one of the best guys out of Ireland who never kind of made it, let's say. And I think he's had injuries and issues, but, you know, he fought him, and he fought the likes of Conor Cook, and, you know, he fought John Redmond actually a few times throughout it, and he fought Danny Roberts, who we saw in the UFC, and Ion Pascu had a very good career fighting in Bellator and other places as well. So he's fought a lot of people in his years. You know, he made his debut all the way back in 2010. So he's a guy who's really paid his dues, and he absolutely deserves this spot here. If you haven't seen him, I describe him as a wild boxer who manages to move his head very well. You know, he looks like, oh geez, he's wide open, but very rarely actually takes a big shot there. Lovely jab, lovely right hand. He was out of the game for a good long while. He came back in 2021, and he hadn't fought since Bama 30 in 2017, and he's 5-1 since that. And he's had some very good wins. You know, he's won by a Peruvian necktie. He's had 3 knockouts, and got the split decision last time out against Christian Koziopzebski, who was a big favourite, I believe, going into that. So massive fight here. Look, I'll roll with my Irish guy. I'm gonna roll with Henry Fadipe, but look, it really could go either way. I'm really looking forward to this, and I think, do you know what? I'd be surprised if someone didn't catch a big shot here and get knocked out or knocked down hard and finished, because both of these guys hit very well. They're both good athletes. They both pick their shots well. They're both, do you know what? They're both defensively good as well, but I just think there's too much offense there. I just think there's too much offense in that one. Right, let's run through the rest of the fights. There's a welterweight fight between Kacper Koziopzebski and Wiktor Waślak. 28-year-oold versus 23-year-old. Viktor is fighting of the famous WCA gym, very good kickboxer at 5-0, I believe. In his career, he is fighting, as I said, the 9-5 opponent in Kacper. Very good knees, starts very fast, good cardio as well, though, whereas Kacper, the other side of it, again, very similar, powerful puncher. He hasn't been knocked out in 6 KSW fights, but he does get caught a little bit, so I think someone, again, is getting knocked out in this. And I think the funny thing is, a lot of these fights, okay, they're close on the betting odds, but I think in the actual fight itself, they will be close until they're no longer close, and that'll, if you know what I mean by that, that'll be actually absolutely very good. Kacper -143 plus 115 for Viktor, and the Fadipe fight, Fadipe is plus 120 minus 150. So very, very close. All of these odds so close in there. Light heavyweight fight then between Lukasz Sudolski 10-2, 6-2, Damian Piwowarczyk. Damian 25 fighting out of Red Dragon again with the likes of Kamrat and Michalski, very good on the ground, and you know, at light heavyweight there are not that many guys, I suppose, who are good on the ground and good with submissions and all that. He can kickbox and he can fight as well. Sudolski, you might remember him. He was on the Contender Series. He ended up losing there. He was the Babylon MMA light heavyweight champion. He's more of a kickboxer now. He has a few submissions thrown in there as well, but you think Damian might have the advantage in that one. Damian is -188 favourite, and I think he might get it done on the ground. Sudolski plus 150. Then the heavyweights, everyone remembers Viktor Pesta, who was in the UFC, 1-4 there, but went 0-2 as well in the PFL. He got Ezekiel choked, funnily enough, by Alexei Olnik. He's fighting a 27-year-old Filip Savok, who is from Poznan. A good bit of power, lands heavy, couple of submissions as well, but this one I think it's going to probably stay on the feet. Peshka is the -150 favourite, 120 underdog. You know, I haven't been able to find a whole lot of Filip, so you know, Peshka. It'll be interesting to see if Peshka, with kind of maybe the change in level here, can get something done, but I don't know, would I be betting too much on that one, to be honest. Then we have Mariusz Joniak versus Miljan Zdravkovic. Mariusz, 26 years old, very good submissions. Miljan, very good kickboxer. So, you know, again, the kickboxing versus the submission game. We'll see who gets the upper hand in that. Submission game guy is the favourite, -275. This is the one, Milan plus 210, the biggest gap, I suppose, in prices. And then the opening fight of the night is between Oskar Szczepaniak and Adrian Gralak. 24-year-old Oskar versus 26-year-old Galak. A good few fights in the amateurs though for Oskar. He's only 4-1 in his career, but I think he's 19 fights. Very good as an amateur. Very good submission artist as well. He has one knockout in that as well, so he can hit. Gralak is a good kickboxer. Good head kick, very powerful punches. He'll want to probably keep it standing. He fought against Jan Laes, who people will know that's his only loss. As is for Oskar, they both lost to Jan Laes. So yeah, that's an interesting one there. Look at the betting odds for that one. Plus 105, -133. The favourite is Oskar there in that one. So I think he will just about maybe not just there, but who knows? Who knows? All right, everyone, we will leave it at that. Thank you very much for tuning in. Really looking forward to seeing this card this weekend. Check it out, KSW on Twitter and all that. You'll find out where to watch it. And until then, we will see you next time. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I will see you next time.